Good morning, 7th grade. Today is November 2nd. We continue with our study of verbs. This week, we're going to be taking a look at direct objects, indirect objects, and other linking or predicate words and verbs inside of the sentence. Before we begin today, I'd like for you to place your first and last name on the top of the paper, Class 7, and today's date, November 2nd. Again, the reminder, please do not separate your pages from this packet. Keep all of your pages intact. And then when we're finished, our packet will go back into Monday's folder. Thank you in advance for that. Today's lesson, I really want to emphasize the importance of remembering and using what we have learned so far this year. If you will notice toward the bottom of the screen, I have 5 different colors. And I'm using these 5 colors today to help you to see the relationship between the words in the sentence. And if you're able to identify the items, the parts of speech, the grammar that we've identified so far this year, that it will make your job identifying the newer parts much easier. Today, our subjects are going to be purple, verbs gold, direct object orange, our new addition indirect objects green, and prepositional phrase aqua blue. Today's term is indirect object. An indirect object does not need to be found in the sentence. However, sometimes we have more information given in the sentence. We're told not only what is done with the action, but to whom the action is given. In our sentences, we're going to be identifying a pattern. And in the bottom right-hand portion of your screen, I have this pattern. Subject, verb, indirect object, direct object. If there is an indirect object in the sentence, it must come before the direct object. If there is not a direct object, there cannot and there will not be an indirect object. Top of the page once again. The doctor gives the patient some medicine. Now, as I'm looking at my different parts, the doctor gives what? Does the doctor give patient? No, the doctor gives medicine. Subject, subject does. What does the subject give? Now today, to whom or for whom? To whom or for whom is the medicine given? It's given to the patient. Mario reserved us a seat. Subject, verb, reserved what? Seat. To whom or for whom was it given? Us. Again, notice the pattern. Subject, verb, indirect, direct. Subject, verb, indirect, direct. It will follow that pattern. The sentences do not need to contain an indirect object. but if they do, it will follow that pattern. Again, the indirect object always comes in between the verb and the direct object. That's this pattern that I have here in red, and this is an extremely important sentence to remember. To determine if a word is an indirect object, you can use the word to. Put the preposition to, or you can use the word for in front of it and change its position in the sentence. I gave Joe a game. I gave what? Game. To whom or for whom? Joe. I gave a game to Joe. This second sentence just rearranges the order and inserts this. Again, in my opinion, the easiest way is to ask yourself, number one, what is the subject? Number two, what is the verb? Number three, gave what? Then, gave to whom or for whom? To whom was it given? It was given to Joe. And then I follow my pattern. It has to follow this pattern. Must. Again, if you have a colored pencil or crayon or marker, again, I don't expect for you to have 5 separate colors. But my point is that if you're able to find these items, it makes it easier. You can simply label S, V, D, O, I, O, and PP if you care to. But my point for today is that I want to be able to find these items, because if I can find these items, well, you're going to see in these sentences that there aren't any other words left. Mrs. Cruz made her children lunch. Mrs. Cruz made what? Lunch. To whom or for whom? Children. It says right in the blank whether the word in italics is a D or IO. This word in italics, in our sentences, you're going to notice I've either got it highlighted green because it's an indirect object, or it's highlighted orange because it's a direct object. So you can make that switch over and you can put that on the blank. You see this is green, that's indirect object, so that's what goes on the blank. Again, if you'll follow with me, please, and you'll label these items, or if you'll underline or use your crayon. Electrician, subject. Installed, verb. Installed what? Fixture. Notice there's no green. There is no indirect object. There doesn't need to be. But if there is, it would come before fixture. That's a direct object. You will remember from last lesson number 13, we talked about transitive and intransitive. Direct object, that's a transitive sentence, isn't it? Even the ones with indirect objects are transitive. Why? Because they have direct objects. Student showed teacher poem. Does it follow this pattern? Yes. S, V, I, O, D, O. Subject, verb, indirect, direct. Showed what? Poem. To whom or for whom? Teacher. 3. The game show host asked the contestants difficult questions. Who? Host. Asked. What? Questions. To whom or for whom were the questions asked? The contestants. Notice the pattern. S, V, I, O, D, O. Got a question? Make yourself a note in the column. Ask it to me by way of GoGuardian. Number 4. S, V, D, O. Prepositional phrase. Do you notice that number 4 is like this item up here? This is just like number 4. I gave what? Game. This is a prepositional phrase. This is not an indirect object. Notice the pattern. It would have to be in this order, and it's not. Subject, verb. The italicized word is a direct object. Prepositional phrase. Number 5. S, girl, V, could describe, could describe. Remember the word not included in the verb. It's an adverb. Could describe what? Feelings. Why is it not an indirect object? Because you cannot have an indirect object without a direct object. If it's the last word in the sentence, class, it's going to be a direct object. Number 1, direct object. Number 3, direct object. Number 5, direct object. They're all the last words in the sentence. Number 6, fluffy white clouds covered the sky. Subject, clouds. Clouds covered what? Sky. Direct object. Alex sent what? He sent card. To whom or for whom did he send it? Teacher. Notice the pattern. Follows the pattern. Italicized word teacher. Green means indirect object. Number 8, coaster gave what? Stomach. To whom or for whom? Me. Gave it to me. Follows the pattern. SVIODO. 11, voters elected what? Newcomer. Number 9 is like number 4, which is like the example at the top of the page. This is a prepositional phrase. Newcomer, direct object. 10, seamstress stitched what? Hem. Prepositional phrase. Follows the pattern. Does not have an indirect object. That makes this a direct object. 11. Do you see the pattern? Coach brought what? He didn't bring the team. He brought a snack. To whom or for whom did he bring it? He brought it for the team. 12. Once again, follows the pattern. Assistant gave what? The assistant didn't give the boss, he gave the message. To whom? The boss. My takeaway from today is that sometimes sentences may have an additional noun or pronoun that comes in between the verb and the direct object. It answers the question, to whom or for whom, and we call that an indirect object. It always comes between the verb and the direct object. A sentence does not need to contain one. However, a sentence will never have an indirect object unless there is a direct object. It always must follow this pattern. Be sure that you have labeled these sentences, number 1 through 12, by placing indirect or direct object on the blank. As we went through the sentence, you labeled or colored these sentence parts: subject, verb, indirect, direct, or if it contained a prepositional phrase. If you've missed one of them, you can pause, you can rewind, you can go back. But on this page, you should have labeled indirect and direct, and then the sentence parts either by way of color or an abbreviation like SVIODO. Tomorrow, Tuesday the 3rd, we're going to continue to talk about the relationship of words in the sentence to their subject and their verb. Have a great Monday.